There's a certain kind of episode of All in the Family that doesn't really explode the way you might expect. It doesn't build toward a loud argument or a dramatic turning point, and instead it settles into something more subtle, something that lingers under the surface, where everyone is talking, everyone is reacting, but somehow no one feels heard, and that quiet frustration, that slow realization that every person in the room feels misunderstood, becomes the real engine of the scene, the thing that keeps it moving even when nothing seems to be moving at all. It usually begins in a way that feels almost too ordinary to matter, just another evening in that familiar living room, the one that somehow feels both cozy and claustrophobic at the same time, where Archie takes his usual place, where Mike is already nearby, where Gloria moves between them and fills the space with her gentle, steady presence. There's comfort in that setup, a rhythm you can almost settle into, because you know how these scenes usually begin with something small, something casual, a comment that seems harmless, a topic that doesn't feel like it should carry much weight. Maybe it's something about work, or a news story, or even just a passing observation about how things are changing. And Archie reacts first, as he often does, offering his perspective with that familiar certainty, that sense that he understands the world in a way that others don't. Mike responds not aggressively, not at first, but with a kind of calm confidence, offering a different viewpoint, something more progressive, more open, something that gently pushes against Archie's assumptions. Gloria listens, as she always does, her attention moving between them, already aware that this could turn into something more, and adds small, kind remarks that soften the edges, that try to keep the conversation grounded. At this stage, it still feels like a conversation, like something that could stay balanced, where different ideas can exist side by side without clashing too hard. But then something shifts, not dramatically, not all at once, just a slight change in tone, in emphasis, in the way a sentence lands. And suddenly the responses start to feel less like engagement and more like correction. Archie says something, and Mike responds in a way that suggests he's not just offering another perspective, but pointing out what he sees as a flaw, a misunderstanding. And even if he's trying to be reasonable, even if his tone is measured, there's something in it that lands differently. Archie hears it, not just as disagreement, but as dismissal, as if his point of view isn't just being challenged, but invalidated, and his reaction shifts accordingly. He pushes back, not just against the idea, but against the implication that he doesn't understand, that he's missing something, and his words carry more weight now, more defensiveness. Mike responds again, trying to clarify, trying to explain, but in doing so, he reinforces that same dynamic, because he's still positioning himself as the one who sees things more clearly, and Archie as the one who doesn't. And that's where the misunderstanding really takes hold, because neither of them feels like they're being listened to, each one interpreting the other's words as something slightly different from what was intended. Gloria steps in, trying to bridge the gap, trying to reframe what's being said, trying to remind them that they're talking about ideas, not attacking each other. But even her attempts start to feel strained, because the conversation has already begun to slip. In her gentle way, offers something softer, something that doesn't take sides, something that tries to bring the focus back to understanding. But even that doesn't fully land because the tension isn't just in the words anymore, it's in the way those words are being heard. This is where the show becomes incredibly precise, because it doesn't just show disagreement, it shows the breakdown of communication, the way people talk past each other, the way intentions get lost, the way meaning shifts depending on who's listening. The living room becomes a kind of echo chamber, where everything said is slightly distorted by the emotions already present, by the assumptions each character brings into the conversation. Archie's worldview drives much of this, because he approaches every discussion with a set of beliefs that feel solid, unshakable. And when those beliefs are challenged, it doesn't feel like a simple disagreement. It feels like something more personal. Mike, on the other hand, approaches the conversation with his own certainty, his own belief that questioning those ideas is necessary, and in doing so, he sometimes underestimates how that challenge is being received. Gloria feels caught between them, her attempts to translate, to soften, to explain, becoming more urgent as the conversation drifts further from understanding, and remains the emotional center, the one who reminds you that there's still care here, still connection, even if it's being overshadowed by frustration. What's fascinating is how the humor emerges from this, not through punchlines, not through obvious jokes, but through the recognition of how human this all feels, how familiar it is to be in a conversation where no one quite understands what the other is trying to say. There are moments where someone pauses, where there's a brief silence, and you can feel the weight of everything that's been said, and everything that hasn't been understood. Those pauses aren't empty. They're full of interpretation, of assumption, of emotion, and they shape what comes next just as much as the words themselves. As the episode continues, the conversation circles, not in a repetitive way that feels forced, but in a way that feels real, because people often return to the same points when they feel unheard, trying to say them differently, trying to make them land. But the more they try, the more it feels like they're moving further apart, because each attempt is filtered through that sense of being misunderstood. And that's where the discomfort really settles in, not because the topic itself is extreme, but because the communication has broken down in such a relatable way. In the context of the 1970s, this dynamic carried even more weight, because these kinds of conversations were happening everywhere, in homes, in public spaces. As society was dealing with change, with new ideas, with shifting norms. The show captured that, not by simplifying it, but by showing how difficult it was to navigate, how easily people could misinterpret each other, how quickly conversations could lose their original meaning. That's part of what made All in the Family so groundbreaking, because it trusted the audience to sit with that complexity, to recognize it, to feel it. And even now, watching it feels relevant, because those dynamics haven't changed. People still struggle to communicate across differences, still feel misunderstood even when they're trying to be clear. As the scene moves toward its conclusion, there's no sudden resolution, no moment where everything clicks into place, just a gradual fading of the intensity, a sense that everyone has said what they can say, even if it hasn't been understood. The room quiets, but it's not a peaceful quiet, it's a reflective one, a pause that carries the weight of everything that didn't quite connect. And in that quiet, there's something almost bittersweet, because you can see the care, the connection, the underlying relationships, even as the communication has failed. Personally, I find these moments some of the most powerful in the show, because they don't rely on big events or dramatic twists. They focus on something more subtle, more universal. The way people can sit in the same room, talk to each other, and still feel completely alone in what they're trying to express. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's about how difficult it can be to truly understand each other, especially when emotions, assumptions, and deeply held beliefs are involved. And that's what lingers after the episode ends. Not a clear answer, not a neat conclusion, but that feeling, that awareness of how easily conversations can slip into misunderstanding, how quickly people can feel unheard. So the living room returns to its usual stillness. The characters move on, at least on the surface, and you're left with that quiet sense of something unresolved, something that might come up again in another moment, in another conversation. And maybe that's the most honest thing the show does. It doesn't pretend that everything can be fixed in a single exchange. It simply shows how it feels when everyone is trying to be understood, and no one quite gets there.